Before we open the Q&A, I believe there might have been a few people who arrived after we began. So would you, after our Q&A, you can come to the front and sign the sheet here. Okay. Okay, let's see. Dr. Kunis, you want to stay there, or do you want to come up here or join? Want to stay there? Take your place. Your place.
Yes,
Your place.
be ritualized.
Ritualized. Be a symbol, a sign.
We insist on being an individualist.
Where's that? Churchill. One finger got tired. This is what I really think.
Okay, so we are now going to open up the Q&A. We've had three presentations that have approached this subject, and certainly from different angles. But I'm sure that if anyone wants to ask if you want to ask any question, whether it's an overarching question or a particular question that you have about one of the presentations, or I would also suggest if you had a question in general about this topic, strategies for propaganda and visual communication, that you could ask that as well. So without any further delay, questions? Now don't make me pick people out. Okay, I should have known. Yes, Dr. Pilata.
Yes, thank you very much. Ask one for John. John, the disappearance of social class, certainly within the literature as opposed to, quote, in reality. Why and how do you see this as a propaganda activity? What's the propaganda issue that's associated with it?
Well, honestly, I think it has to do with selling a particular economic theory, because that's the people had to buy into this idea that they were nothing but atoms, and then class would be sort of irrelevant. And at best, we could begin, and sociologists contributed to this when they insisted on talking simply about social status, which is something very different. So I think a lot of it, I mean, my opinion is I think a lot of it has to do with this, and I'm not saying that these people that were talking about gender and talking about race were involved in some type of collaboration to undermine discussions about class. Many people, and the problem is many people that were arguing for gender issues didn't understand sort of the underlying nature of capitalism and how what they were doing was going to eventually be subverted, because the challenge that they were raising only indirectly challenged anything that would be seriously related to capitalism. But this theory, we're going to transform people into seeing themselves as atoms, I think was very important.
No, go, yeah, we have plenty of time, please.
There had been some research, consumer behavior research, that actually sort of asked people, it's not a great research, but it's something that was done. And they asked people to identify where they would position themselves in the nature of social class. And try to use their own language to find out what they indicated. It was sort of either interesting or maybe alarming to find out that people, if you're an outsider looking in, you may determine that some people would be, you want to call traditionally working class people, and maybe a lot of them don't have a lot of status or a lot of money. But from the inside, from their point of view, they were middle class. And the fact was, most of the people who were interviewed all said with some sort of qualification, but unabashedly, they were all middle class.
Well, as you know, Lester Thoreau went around the country and asked people, what class do you belong to? And about 80% of them said they were middle class.
Yeah, and it still continues to this day, they're all middle class.
Yeah.
So in that case, what we've done is basically everybody sees themselves, and that may be the propaganda that's sold.
Of course, which is impossible. I tell my students that all the time. I mean, it's not possible. I mean, if you look at, I don't know what you're going to define middle class as, maybe median income or something like this, and the type of criteria that are usually used, most people don't have those things.
Right.
It's not even close.
Go ahead.
John, I'm not yelling at you. I'm trying to make sure that everybody else understands and hears. There is another thing that you're saying that lots of people, I mean, most people think they are middle class, but there is the other side, the political propaganda. Keeps addressing middle class as if it is not there and it has to be brought back. No? So it is a peculiar demand that without middle class, the society, capital, cannot exist. It would not survive. So that means it is not there, but it has to be there.
Yeah. Well, you know how, in the United States, at one time, and you were there, I mean, I was there, and we listened, and on the news and TV, they always talked about working class, working people, and so forth. Suddenly that's gone. Obama will not talk about working people. He has to talk about the middle class. You can't talk about working people, or you're seen as playing the certain card, either the race card or the class card, or playing people off. Exactly. We're not allowed to talk about it.
Well, since Reagan announced,
Of course.
let's not talk about classes anymore.
But that's not true. That's not true.
But what do you mean it's not
Obama
true?
talks about a structural underclass all the time.
Under-
And that was his whole effort pressing for single-payer health care.
well, he didn't.
He talked about that all the
He
time.
didn't do it well enough, and there's a whole.
Well, maybe whatever that means well enough.
Well, there's-
It's
well-
not true to just. it's
Well,
not
no, it
fair to
is. No,
say
because
that.
okay, even
It's just like, you can't make these blanket statements.
yeah, I
like that,
can.
John.
And
No,
He just did.
I just did, and I'm going to defend it.
That's not true.
You know,
It's not true. It's demonstrably false. He
Okay.
talks about underclass all the time.
No, he doesn't.
Underemployed people.
well, even if you talk
And,
about
and, you know, he got ridiculed for being a community activist. That was the
but
big
that didn't
ridicule
mean
in the
anything
last
either.
election.
Well, let me answer your question, okay? When you talk about the underclass, that's a very interesting way to not talk about the working class. Because the underclass would be seen as a bunch of deviants, lumpen proletariat.
he's
You don't
talking
have to
about
care.
Working poor. He talks about them
E-
all the time.
even if you're-
And he talks about
Even if
how
you're talking about the working poor,
says
it's
minimum
the
wage is
difference
not
is
a
talking
living
about the
wage.
working class implies some type of organized group that has some political
Class-
agenda.
Class is
That's
not,
the difference.
Class is not invisible at all.
I know it's not
It's
visible.
become entertainment.
But how do you talk?
Like
Oh,
war.
okay. When you talk of entertainment, you dismiss it again.
Yes, in commercial media, but Obama doesn't call it entertainment.
No, of
That's
course he
just
doesn't.
not-
He
that's
just
not-
doesn't talk
they're
about it.
making claims that are not true
He doesn't talk about it.
all the time.
They're rooming together, by the way. Just thought I'd let you know.
Well, people always think we're fighting, but we're just intense. We're friends, but
Yeah.
we're intense.
Does anyone have, several issues were just raised now. Does anyone have any questions? Was this clear what they were fighting about?
I mean, but let me explain. What I'm fighting about is, he's saying that they're talking, well, he's going to say I'm misconstruing this, but this is what I'm fighting about. He's saying that politicians in the United States, including Obama, talk about class all the time. I'm saying that even when they do it in such a way that they're not talking about class as a class of people who are being systematically marginalized by an economic system. They're identifying class in such a way as a group of people that could be easily sort of dismissed as either unimportant, they got into this situation because they made poor decisions, they were just stupid,
That's
and
not
so forth.
true. That's not true.
Okay.
Michelle Obama's been going around the country talking about kids not having breakfast and not having lunch as a structural problem in poor communities. As a structural problem.
Okay, well, that brings to mind, I'm sorry, Dr.
No.
No? Okay, I'm sorry.
Well,
Dr. Malone?
I wanted to ask a question about,
Well, wait a minute, I just wanted to, I didn't want to, okay, I guess Russell, maybe you want to go. First of all, is there anyone in the back of the room who'd like to ask a question? No? Okay. I'm going to pick on them later, don't worry.
Okay, I want to make a comment to John, and I just wanted to say that during your presentation, capitalism was fighting back because the screensaver took over on the computer and Microsoft Windows started dancing around your head, attacking you kind of like a video game. It was really great.
No, that was really happening?
yeah. Yes.
And before that, there was an X-ray before it, like a bullseye.
Yeah.
But I had a question for Max.
Yeah.
Well, I do too.
Okay.
I wanted specifically, I wanted to tell on that. These issues of class, in particular, how they might relate to, you know, what you were talking about, the royalty system and how it's portrayed, and the kind of influence maybe it has on discussions of class at all, if that seems relevant.
Well, in Holland, the Netherlands, it's like there's only, I thought we were a nation of traders, merchants. And
You invented the middle class.
yeah, we
Yeah.
did. The burgers,
Yeah.
which you still have here in Lithuania, in towns like Vilnius, Riga, etc. So nobility in the Netherlands was a non-issue. There were only like 100-200 noble families. And the forefathers of our king, they were like adventurers coming to the Netherlands to seek fame and fortune, and they did. But they were dependent on the middle class, the burghers. Nowadays, we have a crisis, a very severe one. These are our celebrities, but they're not not seen as, yeah, they are the royals, but they're not better than we are. They are people we can touch, we can talk to. We have a national referendum. Our royal house has a circle of, let's say, a circle of excellence. Writers, poets, filmmakers, artists who are consulting. And everybody has a chance to see the royals. They are now making a tour through the Netherlands, and people get invited personally to see them. And there's just one large middle class with those on top, and that's it. And then you have the low lives, unemployed, etc. But yeah, we're one big community. Yeah.
Yeah. That goes to actually now to two questions.
Maybe we'll come back to you, Russ.
One question is, if you could explain a little bit about what the crisis is now. You mentioned there is a crisis in the Netherlands.
We have the largest number of unemployed right now, like 600,000 or even
You know
more.
what percentage that is of the population?
Ute, do you know it?
It's approaching 10% now.
Approaching 10%.
So that's very high for the Netherlands.
Yeah, it's very high for us. And we are a very service-oriented country. So we do a lot of in and export with Germany especially.
Mm.
So we're a knowledge-based society, and we see it in our universities. Lots of our students don't get a job. So they are going to seek for employment under their own level, which has a result for the people from a lower education level. So that's the crisis, unemployment.
So that leads me to my next question, and maybe, and it's not something we really covered, but in the selling of the House of Orange, one, who are you selling, is the brand being sold to? Just the people in the Netherlands, or others? And who are those others?
Yeah, there are two target groups, people in the Netherlands, because the royals, they are independent from the state, but they get a lot of money from the state. They have their expenses, we pay taxes, they don't, or not at all, not partially. But they are also sold as an export product. So last week they went to visit Germany, I think, on a transmission. And it's very important to have their liaisons with the other royal houses. But most of the royals, we only see here William Alexander, his brothers are all or captains of industry, lawyers, so are his cousins. So it's a very mercantile family with this as an extra factor.
And is there a orange message that's being sold to repair the crisis?
Yes, they want to talk about optimism. There's like a PR agency working for them,
Yeah.
which is also state controlled. And together with former advertising men, leading men, they have started an optimism campaign in the Netherlands, asking people to think, well, in a positive way about the future, and with the royal family as the sort of symbol of that radiant, bright new future.
Okay, we have 2 minutes left, so I think we can have plenty of time. I said I'll get to Dr. Cook next.
Thank you, kind sir. Question from Max. Referring to Professor Makunis' talk, principles, identity, do Netherlands people get their identity from the royals?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because maybe you know that Maxima is from Argentina. And in the Netherlands we have a very nationalistic movement with its frontman Geert Wilders, who is traveling all around the world to, well, preach against Islam. And Maxima asked in public, what's a Dutchman? Because, as you know, most of the Dutchmen are of mixed stock. So when you go to Amsterdam or you go to Rotterdam, you will see, well, more than half of the people being from different ethnic stock. Yeah. So what's a Dutchman? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, when I look at myself, I'm partially Swedish, I'm partially so a Viking, I'm partially Swiss, I'm partially Frisian, and maybe even partially British or Saxon or whatever. And so is my whole family. My brother, who's a professor at Stanford, is married to a Trinidadian. So their children, who are also Dutch, are, and she's partially Scottish and African. So.
Okay, I think, who was it?
Eric.
Eric?
Am I allowed?
No.
Is that taking up too much time?
Yeah.
No.
I've had a theory for a long time, that royals were the first supermodels.
Mm-hmm.
And that royalty, when you look at Europeans, most Europeans didn't even have names until about 1400. And then the first name they would take for themselves would be the landlord's name. And then later, as fragmentation and individualism increased, they added a second name, and that was usually a Christian name, and things like that. But we have this trope that every man's house is his castle, and all of this. And it seems to me that royalty initially didn't see itself as the role model for mimicry. But increasingly, it's come to see itself that way, as the role model of the perfect utopian family, which is why Princess Diana was very disturbing to that picture.
Yeah.
But you know, we are expected to look up and then mimic that model, and over time, they've come to realize that, and I think they've taken on that role. Before, they didn't care about the serfs and peasants. You know, they're never going to be one of us. But now there's this strange confluence between like medieval royal worldview and capitalism, and so that every man can be a king and every woman can be a queen, sort of through consumption. And that's when I see all of this in the English royals and the Swedish royals and all. they look like just pure role models. They're like magazine
Yeah.
ads for us
Mhm.
to mimic.
Yeah, they are.
But I think, on the other hand, what Max also referred to is that they are very important for our economics, for our smaller companies, smaller business that want to do business around the world. And their trade missions are economic missions that they are doing and supporting. It's amazing how much quicker all agreements are signed up and people are getting more.
They close the deal as the marketing
Yeah.
Yeah,
executive.
that's really, that's the other part of.
Yeah, I just asked him more, and to go to this kind of a rather cynical question, I don't know if I can ask any other one. But I certainly am familiar with trade missions. Certainly, I live in the state of Ohio, and every governor we have makes 20 trade missions, and they always sign deals. And there's tons of them. The percentage of actual deals that actually come through and are delivered is probably maybe 10%. Is that the situation also, that they have super duper trade missions, look at all these things that are signed, but lo and behold, the payback is so low that they probably spent more on the mission than they actually got back, and
It seems always the question, what is exactly being earned back? We have some large companies going around and maybe they could do it on their own, like building a Shanghai airport or a Hong Kong airport or whatever. But you see on the other hand that we have also many people that are Republican in their hearts. They are against our royal family. But they also, everybody is celebrating the Queen's birthday or the King's birthday, even the Republicans, because it's something you belong to. And even they don't see yet the strongness of other identity in the Netherlands, another person, maybe a president or an important person that can do the missions like they have done in the past 10 years.
but I think you mentioned a particular word is one of the key elements in propaganda, and that's belonging to.
But it's like the identity.
Yeah, it's hard not to.
It's hard not to. It's, branding, building an identity costs lots of money. So
Yeah. Dr.
let's
Kunis, I
stick to
think,
this one.
I'm sorry, we finished?
Anybody? Okay, one more thing. Unemployment. British use their royalty to employ lots of people. And it attracts tourists, all that for the rituals that the British perform. And the thing is, since this royal family in course is open to public, I mean, this is a suggestion, maybe the royals will, if they hear me, will shoot me. But the peasants, the average people, not only try to imitate stars or dress like stars or their favorite icons, but also would be very much elevated if they could meet a princess. No, the princess is there, and all the tourists, they would love. I shook a hand of a princess. That will cost $1, but no, I mean that's a good income. I mean, Buckingham Palace is always surrounded by crowds of tourists. Hotels are full. The guards are standing. And maybe from a balcony, the Queen, hi boys. So I'm saying that they could serve a purpose more than being symbolic images, how to look good. Come.
Okay, we have actually 1 minute and about 30 seconds left. Yes, sir.
I have personal question to Ms. Kunas. I can't find an answer. it seems to me that I can't live without propaganda. I need it. I will explain what I'm talking about. In Soviet times, I was watching TV, and I understood that journalist is telling lie, propaganda, and the politician is also telling lie, propaganda, but is talking about it. And I'm watching, I understand that all two are lying, I'm also listening to a lie, but I'm watching because I can choose any other TV, because it's power of Soviet government and so on and so on. I understood the situation. But I saw that it's happening now, nowadays, when I live in democratic world, and I have a lot of channels, but I'm still watching TV, and I understand that journalist is asking questions which are not true, it's false, it's lie, it's bullshit. And politicians are also arguing about, oh yeah, we will make coalition according to our programs, and they're trying to find out if the programs fit to each other. But it's lie, and I understand that, oh, they are lying, and I'm listening to it, and I'm still listening in these days. What power makes me listen to this lie at this day?
Yeah, there are two things about what I talk about propaganda. That is the creation, like Soviet TV, our normal TV here in the United States is one thing, but what they want you to be, the image they want you to become, is not a lie but an elevation and a demand. You can never look like Jesus, okay? But you are reborn in Jesus. You will never look like the pure Aryan, but there's an image you must aspire to. So it's like if you talk to people who deal with models, they'll say, well, of course, no one looks like her. It takes hours of touching up, but then everyone says, do you know, you look like such and such a model. You aspire. So it is a peculiar lie. No one can be that. But why do we watch and listen and know that they're lying? Your question leads to another dimension, that is, from what source do you know that they're lying? What is the other avenue? The journalists are talking to politicians, and you know the journalists are maybe paid to ask questions and so on. So is there another source that you can compare your watching lies to another source which says this is the real thing? Because we must understand one minor point. Okay? Postmoderns and all of that, we have no longer a language, a discourse that represents the world. Okay? There is no representation. That means that every discourse is its own truth. And if it's just like a personality cults, okay? You read the text. These are stories. And the only way those stories become reality if you start living by them. That's why Islam now is trying, I mean the younger generations try to live like real Muslims. They want to go to paradise, get their 78 virgins. Oh, too old to go to paradise. Would be nice. But anyway, so there is no representation. So, and you cannot say, I will check what this discourse says against some reality. That is not allowed. Everything is rhetoric. And so each one has a rhetoric. So now, to check what the rhetoric claims would be very difficult because you might get another rhetoric. See, that representationalism is gone. I mean, sciences don't have images of reality, they have numbers, they don't look like anything. So that's, that's what people watch. Hey, in fact, Kevin in journalism knows that now the mass technology says, I have, me journalism, okay? I choose what to watch, what to see, and in fact, I choose what I already want to hear and to see. The other ones are wrong. Mass media is full of discourses, and the ones that address me the way I wanted, fine. So, the philosophical issue is representation. Does a discourse represent any reality? If not, then there is no misrepresentation. Sorry.
If there isn't a question from a student in the audience, this Q&A is now declared closed, and there will be, I guess, a 10 to 15-minute coffee break. So, and if you came in late, haven't signed in, please come up front, sign in. Thank you very much, gentlemen.